Hello and welcome to another edition of Cooking Recipes TV. My name is Brian Johnson and today we're going to cook up some tasty homemade beef and vegetable soup. Okay, so for our ingredients we're going to start off by using chuck roast. And what I like to do is I like to trim the chuck as much as I can. I remove as much of the fat as possible and I dice it into small to medium sized cubes. I'll go ahead and I'll saute that off and I'll get a really nice caramelization on it. That'll help color the soup as well as flavor it. Then we'll use some traditional vegetables like the celery, carrots, and onions, as well as some fresh sauteed mushrooms and some green beans. So those are the vegetables we'll use in our homemade beef soup. Okay, and then at the end we're also going to add in some Yukon Gold potatoes. Okay, so I went ahead and I trimmed up my chuck roast, and I probably got about 75% usage out of the beef and the rest was waste. There is a lot of fat on the chuck, but it's really a great beef for stews or soup, anything that you're going to braise for a long period of time. The next step is to season the beef, and I'm going to use kosher salt, fresh cracked black pepper, and I want to tell you a little bit about the seasoning blend here. This is a seasoning blend I'm going to use. It contains rosemary, sesame seeds, red pepper, oregano, minced garlic, dried tomato, and lemon peel. Now, I use a lot of seasonings and spices, and I buy a lot of them just in their pure form, you know, basil or thyme. I do like spice blends, but you really have to be careful. I always read the label, and if I see salt as number 1 or number 2 on the 1 or 2 or number 3 on the ingredient list, I'll probably back away. So this is an excellent example. Hardly any salt at all. Rosemary again, sesame seeds, pepper, herbs, garlic. Looks great. So let's go ahead and I'll season my chuck roast here with kosher salt. I want to get a pretty good amount on. And it's important when you're cooking a stew or a soup that you season as you go along and you cook. So you don't want to dump in all your salt and pepper at the end. Rather, you want to season gradually. So we're seasoning our beef with a pretty good amount of black pepper. I got the salt on, as I mentioned, and you saw it. Now I'm going to put a little bit of this. Basically, this is really good on meats and fish and chicken because it's got thyme and some little bit of red bell pepper and some garlic. So it works really nice. So now I'm just going to kind of work that in nicely into my beef, and then I'll just go ahead and we'll saute off this in a very hot pan, and we'll be set to go. I'm going to saute off the beef with regular vegetable oil. You don't want to use like olive oil or something like that. So we might get a little smoke. This has been heating for about 1.5 minutes now. And as always, anytime I saute off any type of a beef or a chicken or a pork, anything like for a soup or a stew, or anything that's going to get braised, I'm going to want to caramelize and get a lot of color on my meat. So I don't want to overload the pan because that would drop the temperature down of my saute. Okay, so our beef is getting a nice golden saute, starting to caramelize nicely now. I'll start to move the beef around a bit. You can hear it sizzling. And I finished sauteing off all the beef, and I got it into this other soup kettle. And the reason I do that is I want to braise the beef just in some white wine and some beef stock for probably about 1.5 to 2 hours to tenderize the beef. Then, as I get close to that part of the beef being done, I'm going to start sweating the vegetables for the vegetable soup in this container the beef was sauteed in. I'm not going to wash it. I want all those great flavors there. But if I started doing that now, it would just overcook the vegetables. So it's really the best way to get the best flavor for the soup. So we'll go ahead and we'll get the beef stock and beef bits kind of cooking now so they tenderize. Put the beef in, and at this point, what I like to do is I use store-bought broth, just probably like the rest of America. Sure, when I was a professional chef, you know, we made our own veal stock, our own beef stock. You know, we roasted off the veal bones, the whole bit. It's just not practical at home. So always buy a broth that's low sodium. And a lot of times I'll actually cut it down with water. So about 32 ounces of water has already gone in with my beef. I'll go ahead and just pour this in now. I'll get all this beef stock in. Okay, good. And I'm also going to put in about 2 cups of white wine. Okay, that's 2 cups for me. And that's really it. So from this point on, all I want to do is bring this up to a boil. As soon as it hits a boil, I'll reduce it down to a low flame, kind of a medium to medium-low flame, and we'll let this braise for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, at which point we'll sweat off the vegetables. Alright, so it's time to start talking about the vegetables. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to sweat the vegetables off in the same container that we sauteed and seared off the beef. So I went ahead and I diced up about 5 to 6 carrots, 1 head of celery, 2 to 3 onions depending on how big your onions are, and 1 container of sliced mushrooms. I also diced up about 3 or 4 medium-sized Yukon Gold potatoes, and they're soaking in water. So I'll add all of these vegetables here to the saute pan that the beef was cooked off in. I'll then season with salt and black pepper, some thyme, and some basil. After that, I'm going to add in the beef stock and the beef that's been braising for about an hour and a half or so. Right at that point, I'll also add in the potatoes. At the end, I'll go ahead and I'm going to add in the green beans. At which point, basically, the soup will need to cook for probably about another 20 minutes or so. We'll adjust the seasonings and we'll be all finished. It'll be dinner time. Okay, so our vegetables are in. I've got it on about a medium to a medium-low heat right now. And I'm going to go ahead and season the vegetables with fresh cracked black pepper. I like a good amount of black pepper. I'm not a big fan of white pepper. I think it's kind of got a terrible flavor. Some more kosher salt. That was about 2 tablespoons. Some basil. Dried basil is fine in the soup. That was about 1 teaspoon. We'll do about 1 teaspoon of dried thyme. And that looks great. So we'll go ahead and as you can see, there's a lot of the black stuff is still on the bottom of the pan from the beef, and that'll actually come up fine and it'll flavor the soup, and that'll be fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add in 1 more box of the beef broth, 32 ounces, to the beef that was braising for a while. A lot of the liquid boiled off, so we'll add in another 32 ounces of the beef broth. Alright, so the vegetables have been sweating for probably about 15 to 20 minutes or so. I've been stirring, and a lot of the meat juices and things are coming up off the bottom of the pan, and things are looking pretty great here. So, tasty beef soup. I'm going to go ahead now and carefully pour in the beef stock, the white wine, all that stuff that we put in here. And the beef should be at the bottom. We'll try to get in that without spilling too bad. And now, at this point, I just want to make sure I have it on a lower temperature. Stir everything in, and we're going to want to let this cook for, on a low flame, probably another hour. At this point, we can go ahead and add the potatoes. So as I mentioned, I diced up about, I guess it was like four or so medium-sized potatoes. So I'll add in enough. Looks like that'll be good. We'll let that cook for a little bit longer, about another half hour to an hour. We'll do some taste testing and we'll be set to go. Alright, so we're just about finished now. We just have a couple more steps in finishing off our beef soup. And I want to mention, if you like, I like a little tomato, so I put in canned tomato kind of near the end, at the same time as the green beans. So I've got the green beans all cut up here. We'll put them in. Now these are fresh green beans. You can use frozen, but obviously it's going to taste a lot better if you use the fresh. So I add in my green beans, and then it's just a matter of simmering on the stove for probably about 10 minutes or so, and it'll be ready to eat. Alright, bon appetit! Soup's on and it's looking good. Homemade beef and vegetable soup.